Dr. Henry Morgentaler set up illegal clinics to perform abortions across the country. And after a legal battle, the Supreme Court struck down the federal abortion law in 1988, and the procedure was decriminalized. Dr. Morgentaler died in 2013. Dr. Abraham Morgentaler is his son. Hi, Dr. Morgentaler. Good to have you with us.
Great to be with you.
I appreciate you making the time. I was wondering this week, as you saw, like the rest of us, that leaked opinion, what was going through your mind? Also, of course, given the role your father played in this country.
Well, I couldn't help but think about what it would be like for my father to hear about this and how he would respond. And I'm sure I've got this idea in my head that he would be out there in front of the microphones making a big stand. Abortion for him was really a human rights issue. It was fundamental. And once we have certain rights, they become just part of what life is like for us. And we really don't appreciate them fully until they're threatened or taken away. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the United States now.
He essentially fought this fight for decades, and it was decades ago that the decision was rendered by the Supreme Court. What do you think he would think that now, decades later, this type of discussion is still happening?
Well, the issue about abortion has been around for, I want to say forever. I don't know if that's true, but as a medical issue, it's been around for a very long time in Canada and the United States and many countries around the world. And I think we're very fortunate in Canada that the law essentially was liberated. Canada is an incredible country in its recognition of the rights of all peoples and of their rights as individuals as well. I don't think this is going to go away in Canada the way that it probably will in the United States. And it has something to do with really the political nature of Canada versus the US and also the judicial structure.
I'll ask you to just expand on that, because I think that's where a lot of the discussion this week went. We saw the big headlines in the United States. We're so close, obviously, as neighbors. And then there were a lot of people here asking, and a live political back and forth as well, hey, could the rights of Canadian women be rolled back in this country too? And you seem to think that there is kind of a real difference between the US and Canada, if I'm right?
Well, I do think that there is a difference, but I have to tell you is that you cannot take any right for granted. You just cannot. And my father, an interesting story that I don't know that a lot of people appreciate is that in 1973, when Roe v. Wade decision was announced by the Supreme Court in the United States, that was my father's cue. He believed that event was what was the sign for him that maybe Canada was ready also for a national discussion on that. And as a result of the Roe v. Wade decision, it was, I believe, pretty sure it was in 1973. He was already doing abortions. He was already known for it. He was getting referrals from hospitals, which by and large were not doing them. The law at the time only allowed them if they had a 3-man board and the woman's life was endangered. And he was working in his own clinic. That was what was technically illegal on his part and why the government came after him. But so he was doing abortions, and in a sense, he was servicing the community. He was doing abortions on the daughters and girlfriends and wives of politicians, police officers, some of whom ended up, politically being his enemies. He was essentially doing a public service, but it was all on the QT, if you will, on the lowdown. And after Roe v. Wade, my father decided it was time to push the envelope. And he ended up performing an abortion live. Well, I guess it was recorded, but he did it live on the television show W5. And it aired on Mother's Day in 1973. And it was a shock to the country. And it propelled the conversation or the discussion. And he thought it was time for things to change. And I think one could argue that he was right.
I was listening to an interview with him on the day of the Supreme Court decision. And he was highlighting then some of the impetus for what he is doing or what he was doing around the lack of access, right? So even if someone could get an abortion, they had to drive to a major center. And in that in that area, things have not progressed a huge amount. That's still a big, access is still an issue in Canada. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, that's true for all sorts of healthcare, including abortion. And it's true in the United States, and it's true in many places. You know, the remarkable thing is that this is a medical procedure. Medical care is really between a doctor and his or her patient, right? And ultimately, the decisions about what we do with our bodies come down to the individuals. That's what human rights is, and or are is, and so. On the one hand, it's actually crazy that we even have restrictions on something like this. You know, the thing that is so hard to understand for people who are opponents of abortion is don't have one. Like, what gives them the right to tell other people what to do with their bodies? Essentially, it's forced pregnancies, and it's just not right.
It seemed to underpin, actually, when you were saying that, it again reminded me of what your dad was saying at the time, which was he seemed to be a pretty voracious defender of the idea that you can hold your own beliefs, right? Which is sometimes lost in the political discussion right now. That it's okay if you have certain feelings about the act of abortion. It's just the imposition of those on others that he took issue with. Is that fair?
Well, very much so. So, you know, my father believed in something. You know, and he believed in human rights. My father went through Auschwitz and the concentration camps and the Holocaust. And that episode, amongst other things, was really about the indignities that human beings suffered at the hands of other individuals. And the flip side of indignities is human rights. And he believed that to his core and was willing to put up or shut up. And he ended up going to prison because of his beliefs.
Okay, I'm out of time. Dr. Morgentaler, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
Great speaking with you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.